Captain Elena Vasquez stared at the screen in front of her. The numbers did not make sense. Her ship, the Terran research vessel Endeavor, had been flying through empty space for 3 weeks. They were supposed to be mapping star systems near the edge of the galaxy. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. "Captain, you need to see this," said Dr. James Chen. He was the ship's science officer and xenobiologist. His voice sounded excited and worried at the same time. Elena walked over to his station. The main screen showed a star system with 5 planets, but something was wrong with the star. It was much bigger and redder than it should be. "What am I looking at, James?" Elena asked. "A dying star," James replied. "It's turning into a red giant. The process is happening much faster than normal. Maybe 6 months before it swallows the inner planets." Elena frowned. Dying stars were not unusual, but something else caught her attention. There were strange energy readings coming from the 3rd planet. "Are those artificial signals?" she asked. "Yes, Captain. Someone lives there." Elena felt her stomach drop. A living world about to be destroyed was very different from an empty system with a dying star. She turned to her communications officer. "Yuki, can you get us closer? I want to know more about these signals." Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka nodded and started working at her station. "Getting closer now, Captain. We should be in range for detailed scans in 2 hours." Elena walked back to her chair. The Endeavor was a small ship with a crew of only 40 people. They were explorers and scientists, not diplomats. But if there was intelligent life on that planet, they had a duty to make contact. 2 hours later, the ship's sensors had much more information. The planet was beautiful. It had blue oceans, green continents, and white clouds. The cities were small and built in harmony with nature. There were no signs of heavy industry or weapons. "Captain," said Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez over the intercom, "the energy readings are getting stronger. These people are definitely trying to communicate with something in space." Elena made a decision. "Take us into orbit. Let's see if we can talk to them." The Endeavor moved closer to the planet. Soon, they were receiving clear transmissions. The universal translator worked slowly at first, but then patterns emerged. "Captain," Yuki said with excitement in her voice, "I think I understand some of their language. They're sending out distress calls." "Distress calls? To who?" "Everyone. Any ship that passes by. They know their star is dying. They've been asking for help for months." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Have any ships answered?" Yuki worked quietly for several minutes. Then her face went pale. "Yes, Captain. 7 different civilizations have received their calls. The Altarians, the Zephyrians, the Hegemony, the Trade Federation, and 3 others. What did they say?" "They all said no." Elena stared at the planet on the screen. Millions of beings lived down there. They knew they were going to die, and they had asked the galaxy for help. Everyone had turned them away. "Why?" Elena asked. "Why did they refuse?" James had been listening to more transmissions. "From what I can understand, the other species gave different reasons. Some said it would cost too much. Others said they didn't have enough ships. The Hegemony said they don't help primitive civilizations." Elena felt anger building inside her. She had seen war and suffering before, but this was different. This was an entire species about to die, and the galaxy had decided they weren't worth saving. "What do we know about these people?" she asked. James pulled up his analysis on the main screen. "They call themselves the Kithara. Population about 12 million. They seem peaceful. No signs of weapons or military. Their technology is basic, but they have developed some very advanced art and music." "Art and music?" "Yes, Captain. They seem to communicate partly through emotions and artistic expression, some kind of empathic ability. They've been creating what look like memory crystals, trying to preserve their culture before they die." Elena watched the data scroll across the screen. The Kithara had large, gentle eyes and tall, thin bodies. Their cities were full of gardens and beautiful buildings that looked like they had grown from the ground rather than being built. "Captain," Yuki interrupted, "I'm receiving a direct transmission from the planet. They've detected our ship. Put it through." The main screen changed to show a Kithara standing in what looked like a communication center. The being was tall and graceful, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer. When it spoke, the universal translator converted the words into English. "Unknown vessel, we greet you with hope. I am melodic current through deep waters, speaking for the Kithara people. We know our sun fails. We have asked others for aid, but none will help. We do not ask you to save us all. We only ask that you take some of our children to safety. Please, our race must not disappear completely from the universe." Elena felt her heart breaking. The being on the screen showed such dignity in the face of death. Behind Melodic Current, she could see other Kythera working frantically on what looked like artistic projects. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran research vessel Endeavor. We hear your call for help. Please give us time to analyze the situation." Melodic Current's large eyes seemed to brighten. "You will consider helping us? Even though others have refused?" "We will consider it," Elena said firmly. After the transmission ended, Elena called a meeting of her senior officers. They gathered in the small conference room near the bridge. "Options?" Elena asked simply. Dr. Chen spoke first. "We can't evacuate 12 million people. Our ship can maybe take 200 beings safely. Even if we called every human ship in this sector, we might save a few thousand at most." "What about the other species?" asked Rosa. "Could we convince them to change their minds?" Yuki shook her head. "I've been monitoring their communications networks. They've made their decisions. Some of them seem embarrassed about it, but none are willing to help." Elena looked around the table. "What does Earth Command say?" "I sent a priority message 4 hours ago," Yuki replied. "No response yet. But even if they approve a rescue mission, we don't have the ships or resources for a full evacuation." "So we're talking about choosing who lives and who dies," Elena said quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the terrible mathematics of the situation. They could save some Kythera, but most would die when their star expanded. Dr. Chen broke the silence. "Captain, I've been studying their transmissions. These people have created something beautiful on their world. Their art, their music, their way of living in harmony with nature. If we let them all die, the universe loses something precious." Elena stood up and walked to the window. Below them, the planet Kythera turned slowly in space. Cities full of living beings who had done nothing wrong except be born near a dying star. "There has to be another way," she said. "Humans have faced impossible odds before. We've always found a solution." She turned back to her officers. "I want every person on this ship thinking about this problem. There has to be something we can do, something the other species missed." Rosa raised her hand. "Captain, what if we're thinking about this wrong? What if instead of trying to do this alone, we ask for help from humans across the galaxy?" Elena felt a spark of hope. "What do you mean?" "I mean every human ship, every colony, every outpost. Not just military vessels. Merchant ships, mining vessels, passenger liners, everything. What if we organize the biggest grassroots rescue operation in human history?" Elena smiled for the first time in hours. "Now that sounds like something humans would do." Captain Elena Vasquez stood in her quarters staring at the message from Earth Command. She had read it 3 times, but the words remained the same. The official response was polite but clear. Humanity simply could not mount a rescue operation for the Kythera. The message explained the reasoning. Earth was still rebuilding from the war with the Centauri coalition. Most human ships were needed for defense or trade routes. The colonies required constant supply runs. The military was stretched thin across dozens of systems. "We sympathize with the plight of the Kythera," the message concluded. "But we cannot risk human lives and resources for a species we have no treaties with. Your orders are to document the situation for historical records and return to your mapping mission." Elena deleted the message and walked to her window. The planet Kythera filled the view, beautiful and doomed. She could see the northern continent where most of the major cities were located. Dr. Chen had told her that the Kythera were working day and night on their memory crystals, trying to preserve everything they could of their civilization. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Dr. James Chen entered carrying a tablet. His face looked tired and sad. "Captain, I've been analyzing more of their transmissions. You need to see this." He handed her the tablet. The screen showed a Kythera family working together on what looked like a crystal sculpture. Parents and children sat around the crystal, touching it with their hands while singing in harmonious tones. "What am I looking at?" Elena asked. "They're putting their memories into the crystal," James explained. "Their entire family history, their feelings, their experiences. It's like a 3-dimensional book that holds emotions as well as facts." Elena watched the family work. The children seemed too young to understand that they were dying, but they participated with serious concentration. "James, how advanced is this memory crystal technology?" "Very advanced in its own way. They can store incredible amounts of information in a small space. But Captain, that's not the important part. These crystals can only be read by beings with empathic abilities like the Kithara. When they die, this knowledge dies with them. Elena felt a weight settle on her shoulders. The Kithara were not just facing physical extinction. Their entire way of understanding the universe would disappear. Have any of the other species shown interest in this technology? She asked. James shook his head. The Altarians said it was emotionally primitive. The hegemony called it psychic nonsense. None of them see any value in what the Kithara have created. Elena handed back the tablet. What else have you learned? The Kithara don't just make art, Captain. They are art. Everything they do has artistic meaning. Their language is partly musical. Their buildings are grown rather than built. Even their agriculture is designed to be beautiful as well as functional. And this means nothing to the other civilizations? Worse than nothing, some of them see the Kithara as weak because they don't have weapons or industry. The Trade Federation said they contribute nothing of value to galactic commerce. Elena walked back to the window. What about their star? How much time do we really have? 4 to 6 months before the habitable zones become too hot for Kithara physiology. Maybe 8 months before the planet is completely uninhabitable. Elena made a decision. Call a full crew meeting. All hands to the main cargo bay in 1 hour. An hour later, all 40 members of the Endeavor's crew stood in the cargo bay. Elena looked at the faces around her. They came from 12 different countries on Earth and 3 different colonies. Some were career military, others were civilian scientists. All of them had joined this mission because they wanted to explore the unknown. By now you all know about our situation, Elena began. We found a dying civilization that nobody else will help. Earth Command has ordered us to document their extinction and move on. She paused, looking around the room. I'm going to be honest with you. I can't follow that order. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, Elena's second-in-command, stepped forward. Captain, what are you saying? I'm saying that I didn't become a Starfleet officer to watch genocide happen while I take notes. These people are going to die, and we're the only ones who care enough to try to help them. Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez raised her hand. Captain, with respect, we can't evacuate 12 million people. Our ship can hold maybe 200 Kithara safely. I know, Elena replied. But what if we weren't alone? What if every human ship in this sector helped? Dr. Chen stepped forward. Captain, I've run the numbers. Even if we could get every human vessel within 50 light years to help, we're talking about maybe 500 ships total. Most of them are small craft. Even working together, we might save 50,000 Kithara at most. 50,000 is better than 0, Elena said firmly. Communications Officer Yuki Tanaka looked worried. Captain, if we disobey Earth Command, we could all face court-martial. Our careers would be over, Elena nodded. That's true. Which is why I'm not ordering anyone to help. This has to be voluntary. Anyone who wants to return to Earth can take the shuttle when the next supply ship arrives. The cargo bay fell silent. Elena could hear the hum of the ship's engines and the distant sound of air recyclers. Finally, Rosa spoke up. Captain, my grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days on Earth, about people who hid refugees from wars and dictators. She said that sometimes you have to choose between following orders and following your conscience. What are you saying, Rosa? I'm saying my conscience won't let me watch an entire species die without trying to help. Count me in, Dr. Chen nodded. The Kithara have created something beautiful and unique. If we let that disappear, we're as bad as the civilizations that turned them away. One by one, other crew members stepped forward. Some spoke about moral duty. Others talked about what it meant to be human. A few simply said they couldn't live with themselves if they did nothing. In the end, every single crew member volunteered to stay and help. Elena felt tears in her eyes. Thank you. All of you. Now, here's what we're going to do. She activated the main display screen. A map of the local sector appeared, showing the positions of human ships and colonies. We're going to send a message to every human captain, every colony administrator, every outpost commander within communication range. We're going to tell them what's happening here and ask for help. What if they say no? Asked Lieutenant Kim. Then we save who we can with what we have, Elena replied. But I have faith in humanity. When we explain the situation, when people understand what's at stake, they'll come. Dr. Chen looked thoughtful. Captain, what about the other species? What if they try to stop us? Let them try, Elena said with steel in her voice. We're not asking permission anymore. We're going to save the Kithara because it's the right thing to do. As the meeting broke up, Elena pulled aside her senior officers. Rosa, I need you to start thinking about how we can modify cargo ships for passenger transport. James, keep studying Cathera physiology. I want to know exactly what they need to survive. Yuki, start crafting our message to the human fleet. What should the message say? Yuki asked. Elena thought for a moment. Tell them the truth. Tell them that 12 million innocent beings are about to die, and that every other civilization in the galaxy has decided they don't matter. Tell them that humanity has a chance to show the universe what we really stand for. She looked out the window at the planet below, and tell them that we're going to attempt the impossible because that's what humans do. The first response came from Captain Maria Santos of the cargo freighter Iron Horse, just 18 hours after Elena sent out the call for help. Endeavor, this is Santos. Got your message about the dying world. My ship can carry 800 refugees if we stack them in the cargo holds. When do you need us? Elena stared at the message in disbelief. She had expected arguments, questions about authorization, demands to see official orders. Instead, she got a simple offer to help. The second response came from the mining vessel, Deep Digger. Captain Vasquez, we're 3 days out from your position. We can retrofit our ore processors to carry passengers. Rough ride, but better than dying. Commander Zhang sends his regards and his ship. By the end of the first week, Elena had received replies from 47 human vessels. Not all of them could help, but most offered whatever assistance they could provide. More importantly, they were spreading the word to other ships. Dr. James Chen burst into Elena's quarters with a huge grin on his face. Captain, you have to see this. The mining colony at Kepler 442 just sent a message. They're sending every transport they have, plus construction materials to help build temporary shelters. Elena read the message. The colonists at Kepler 442 had voted unanimously to help. They were sending 12 ships and had offered to take in 3,000 Kithera refugees permanently. James, this is incredible. But how are we going to coordinate all this? We're talking about dozens of ships arriving from different directions at different times. Actually, Captain, I think I have an idea about that. Remember Lieutenant Commander Torres from the Fleet Academy? She's commanding a logistics ship called the Quartermaster about 6 days from here. If we can get her to help, she could coordinate the entire operation. Elena smiled. Carmen Torres had been the best logistics officer in their academy class. If anyone could organize a massive rescue operation, it was her. Send her a message. Tell her we need someone who can make order out of chaos. The response from the quartermaster came back within hours. Elena, you magnificent crazy person. Of course I'll help. My ship has the communication arrays to coordinate a fleet operation. Give me 3 days to reorganize my supply run, and I'll be there with more caffeine and determination than you know what to do with. Carmen. While they waited for more ships to arrive, Elena's crew worked with the Kythera to understand their needs. Dr. Chen spent hours talking with Kythera scientists through the universal translator. The conversations were slow and sometimes confusing, but gradually they learned important information. The Kythera needed a specific mixture of gases to breathe. Their food requirements were complex but manageable. Most importantly, they became very ill if separated from their empathic connections to other Kythera for too long. It's like they're psychically linked, Chen explained to Elena. Not a hive mind, but something similar. They need to be near others of their kind to stay mentally healthy. This created a new problem. They couldn't just scatter small groups of Kythera across different ships. They needed to keep families and communities together as much as possible. Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez had been working on another challenge, how to modify human ships to carry Kythera passengers safely. The good news is that most of our ships have decent life support systems, she told Elena. The bad news is that none of them were designed for long-term passenger transport. Rosa had developed a plan to install temporary life support pods in cargo holds. The pods wouldn't be comfortable, but they would keep the Kythera alive during the journey to safety. How long to install these pods? Elena asked. With a good crew, maybe 12 hours per ship. But Captain, we're going to need a lot of materials. Medical supplies, food synthesizers, waste recycling units. Elena nodded. Add it to the list of things we need to beg, borrow, or steal. The real breakthrough came when Communications Officer Yuki Tanaka made contact with the human colony ship, New Horizon. The ship was carrying 15,000 colonists to a new world. but their destination planet had turned out to be unsuitable for settlement. They had been searching for a new home for 6 months. "Captain," Yuki said excitedly, "the New Horizon can take 10,000 Kithara refugees, but more than that, they want to find a planet where humans and Kithara can live together. They think it could be the start of something amazing." Elena felt hope growing in her chest. This was bigger than just a rescue operation. It was the beginning of true cooperation between species. As more ships arrived in the Kithara system, Elena realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Humans were coming from across the sector, not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to help. The cargo ship Big Bear arrived with extra food supplies and medical equipment. The passenger liner Starlight Express had converted its luxury cabins into refugee quarters. Even military vessels were joining the effort, despite having no official authorization. Lieutenant Commander Torres arrived on schedule and immediately began organizing the growing fleet. She set up communication networks, assigned sectors for different ships, and created schedules for the evacuation. "Elena," Carmen said during their first face-to-face meeting in years, "this is either the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, or we're all going to be court-martialed together." "Probably both," Elena replied. The Kithara were amazed by the human response. Melodic current through deep waters, who had become the primary liaison between the species, sent a message that made Elena cry. "We had given up hope. 7 great civilizations told us we were not worth saving. But you small humans with your few ships have brought us the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that someone in the universe believes we matter." As Elena watched human ships arriving every day, she realized that they were proving something important. The galaxy's major powers had claimed that rescuing the Kithara was impossible because it required too many resources and too much coordination. But humans were making it work through determination and cooperation. Rosa had figured out how to convert mining equipment into life support systems. Dr. Chen had learned to communicate directly with Kithara through their empathic abilities. Yuki had created a translation network that let humans and Kithara work together, despite language barriers. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Kim said during a briefing, "we're up to 86 ships now. At this rate, we might actually be able to evacuate everyone." Elena looked at the tactical display showing all the human vessels in the system, ships from the military, merchant marine colonies, and private owners, all of them working together for people they had never met. "You know what the best part is?" Elena said. "None of these captains asked for permission from their governments or corporations. They just came because it was the right thing to do." Dr. Chen nodded. "The other species keep asking us who's in charge of this operation. They can't understand how we're organizing something this complex without a central authority. What do you tell them? That humanity doesn't always need orders to do what's right." As Elena prepared for the massive evacuation effort, she realized that they were changing more than just Kithara lives. They were showing the galaxy that there was another way to respond to crisis. Instead of calculating costs and benefits, humans had simply asked, "What can we do to help?" The answer, it turned out, was much more than anyone had thought possible. 2 months after Elena had first received Earth Command's order to document and move on, she was coordinating the largest humanitarian mission in galactic history, and every day more human ships kept arriving. The evacuation began at dawn on the planet Kithara. Elena watched from the bridge of the Endeavor as the first transport shuttles descended through the planet's atmosphere. After 2 months of preparation, they were finally ready to move 12 million people to safety. "Transport 1 is approaching Landing Zone Alpha," announced Yuki over the communication network. "Estimated passenger load, 400 Kithara families." Elena felt her stomach tighten. They had run thousands of simulations, but this was real. If anything went wrong, people would die. The first shuttle landed smoothly in a field outside the Kithara capital city. Elena watched through the shuttle's cameras as the doors opened and human crew members stepped out to meet the waiting Kithara families. Dr. James Chen was on that shuttle, and his voice came through clearly over the radio. "The families are boarding now, Captain. They're bringing their memory crystals and some personal items. The children seem excited about flying in space." Elena smiled despite her worry. The Kithara children had been fascinated by the human ships. Many of them had never seen technology more advanced than their own crystal growing techniques. "How are the life support modifications working?" Elena asked Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez. Better than expected, Captain. The Kythera actually need less oxygen than we thought, and the gravity adjustments are working perfectly. Over the next 6 hours, shuttles from dozens of human ships began landing across the Kythera homeworld. The evacuation plan that Lieutenant Commander Carmen Torres had developed was working like a complex dance. Ships specialized in different tasks. The cargo vessels took the largest groups of refugees. The passenger liners focused on families with small children. The mining ships, with their heavy-duty life support systems, transported Kythera who needed special medical care. Elena was amazed by how well humans and Kythera were working together. Despite language barriers and cultural differences, both species seemed to understand that time was running out. Captain, Dr. Chen reported from the planet's surface. I'm at the Great Archive. The Kythera are loading their most important memory crystals onto our shuttles. These contain thousands of years of their history and culture. Elena could hear the emotion in Chen's voice. He had spent weeks learning to appreciate Kythera art and philosophy. The memory crystals were not just historical records, but living repositories of an entire civilization's dreams and wisdom. Make sure those crystals get special protection during transport, Elena ordered. Already on it, Captain. We've built padded containers with climate control. The evacuation continued for days. Elena barely slept, spending most of her time coordinating between ships and monitoring the progress. The Kythera star was getting brighter and more unstable each day. Solar flares were starting to interfere with shuttle operations. On the 4th day, they encountered their first major crisis. Captain, Yuki's voice was urgent. The cargo ship Heavy Lifter is reporting life support problems. They have 3,000 Kythera on board and their oxygen recyclers are failing. Elena's blood went cold. 3,000 lives were at stake. Options? She demanded. The nearest ship with extra capacity is the Starlight Express, but they're 6 hours away, reported Carmen Torres from the quartermaster. Elena made a quick decision. Rosa, can we transfer our emergency oxygen supplies to the Heavy Lifter? Already calculating the transfer, Captain. We can buy them 4 hours if we move fast. The Endeavour raced to rendezvous with the Heavy Lifter. Elena watched as her crew worked frantically to transfer oxygen canisters and spare recycling equipment. At the same time, 3 other human ships diverted to help with the rescue. This is Captain Rodriguez of the Heavy Lifter, came a tired voice over the radio. Your oxygen transfer worked perfectly. All Kythera passengers are safe. Thank you. Elena felt relief flood through her body, but there was no time to celebrate. The evacuation had to continue. On the 7th day, something unexpected happened. Elena was reviewing progress reports when Yuki called her to the communication station. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from outside the system. It's from the Altarian Empire. Elena frowned. The Altarians had been one of the first species to refuse help for the Kythera. Put them through. The main screen showed an Altarian commander in an elegant uniform. Altarians looked like tall, graceful birds with golden feathers and large, intelligent eyes. Human Captain, the Altarian said. I am Commander Brightwing over distant mountains. We have been observing your rescue operation. Observing? Elena replied coldly. Just observing? Initially, yes. But my crew has voted. We wish to contribute 3 ships to your evacuation effort. Elena was speechless. After months of refusal, the Altarians were offering to help. Why now? She asked. The Altarians' feathers shifted color slightly, which Elena had learned was a sign of emotion. Because you humans have shown us something we had forgotten, the value of compassion over calculation. We are ashamed of our earlier refusal. Elena felt a mixture of anger and hope. Commander, we appreciate any help, but understand that this operation is about saving lives, not politics. Understood, Captain. Our ships will follow your coordination protocols. The Altarian ships arrived 2 days later. They were beautiful vessels that looked more like works of art than spacecraft. Their technology was more advanced than human ships, and they could carry passengers much more comfortably. Dr. Chen reported that the Kythera were amazed by the Altarian ships. Captain, it turns out that Kythera and Altarian art forms have some similarities. They're having incredible cultural exchanges during the flights. But the Altarians were not the only ones reconsidering their position. On the 10th day of evacuation, the Trade Federation sent a single ship. On the 12th day, a Zephyrian research vessel arrived offering to help transport Kythera scientists and their equipment. Elena realized that the human rescue effort was having effects far beyond saving the Kythera. Other species were beginning to question their own decisions. "Captain," Carmen Torres said during one of their daily briefings, "we're now coordinating over 200 ships from 6 different species. This has become the largest multi-species operation in galactic history." Elena looked at the tactical display showing ships from across the galaxy working together. "How many Kythera have we evacuated so far?" 8.7 million, Carmen replied. "At current pace, we'll have everyone off planet 3 weeks before the star becomes critical." Elena felt a surge of pride. What had started as an impossible mission was actually succeeding. But the most meaningful moment came when melodic current through deep waters sent a personal message to Elena. "Captain Vasquez, I wanted you to know that our children are learning human songs during the evacuation flights. They are mixing your music with our empathic harmonies. We are creating something new together, something that never existed before. This is the greatest gift you could have given us, not just survival, but hope for the future." As Elena watched the evacuation ships departing for their new homes across human space, she realized that they had accomplished more than rescuing a dying civilization. They had proven that cooperation and compassion could achieve what seemed impossible. The galaxy's major powers had claimed that saving the Kythera was too expensive and too difficult. But humans, working together with determination and creativity, had found a way. More importantly, they had inspired other species to remember their own capacity for compassion. The evacuation of Kythera was becoming a turning point in galactic civilization. Elena looked out at the dying star, now visibly larger and redder than when they had first arrived. Soon it would expand enough to destroy the beautiful world below. But that world's people would survive, and their culture would continue to grow in new places. "Captain," Dr. Chen said, joining her at the observation window, "what do you think happens next?" Elena smiled. "Next, we show the galaxy that this was just the beginning." 6 months after the last Kythera had been evacuated from their dying world, Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the garden dome of New Kythera Prime. Around her, impossible flowers grew in spiraling patterns while children from 2 different species played together among the crystal trees. "Captain Elena," called a young Kythera child, running up to her with a glowing flower in his hands. "Look what we grew with Sarah." Sarah, a human girl about the same age, beamed with pride. "We used both human soil science and Kythera plant singing. The flowers glow because they're happy." Elena knelt down to examine the flower. It pulsed with soft blue light and seemed to respond to the emotions of the people around it. Human botanists and Kythera plant singers had been working together for months, creating new forms of agriculture that were both practical and beautiful. "That's wonderful," Elena told the children. "What else have you been learning?" "The Kythera kids are teaching us empathic communication," Sarah explained. "And we're teaching them how to use computers and math." Elena watched the children run back to their play. The integration of human and Kythera communities had been more successful than anyone had dared hope. 3 human colonies had welcomed large groups of Kythera refugees, while smaller groups had spread across dozens of human worlds. Dr. James Chen approached from across the garden. He looked happier than Elena had ever seen him. "Captain, you have to see the latest reports from the integration committees. Kythera empathic abilities are revolutionizing human psychology and counseling. And human technology is helping the Kythera preserve and share their memory crystals across vast distances." Elena nodded. The benefits of the rescue had gone far beyond simple humanitarian satisfaction. Kythera knowledge of ecology and sustainable living was helping human colonies terraform marginal worlds. Meanwhile, human manufacturing techniques were allowing the Kythera to create their artistic memory crystals faster and in larger quantities. "What about the other worlds?" Elena asked. "New Kythera 2nd is developing incredibly fast. The Kythera there are working with human engineers to create living buildings that grow instead of being constructed. And New Kythera 3rd has become a center for interspecies art and culture." Elena smiled. The decision to spread the Kythera across multiple worlds had been wise. It preserved their species while allowing different communities to develop in new directions. "Captain," Chen continued, "I've been meaning to ask you something. How does it feel to have been promoted instead of court-martialed?" Elena laughed. That had been the biggest surprise of all. Instead of facing punishment for disobeying orders, She had been promoted to admiral and given command of the new Interspecies Humanitarian Alliance. Earth Command's explanation was simple, Elena said. The Kythera evacuation showed the galaxy that humanity has something to offer beyond military power or trade agreements. We've become known as the species that cares about others. The political consequences had been enormous. Other species had begun questioning the cold calculations that dominated galactic politics. Several civilizations had started their own humanitarian programs, partly from genuine compassion and partly because they didn't want to be seen as heartless compared to humans. Admiral Vasquez, came a voice behind her. Elena turned to see melodic current through deep waters approaching. The Kythera leader had taken a new name to reflect his role as ambassador between species. Bridge between swimming stars. Bridge, Elena said warmly. How are the cultural exchange programs going? Beyond our greatest hopes, Bridge replied. His empathic communication gave his words extra emotional weight that Elena could now partially sense thanks to her exposure to Kythera abilities. Human creativity combined with Kythera emotional depth is creating art forms that neither species could have imagined alone. And the children born here, growing up with both human logic and Kythera empathy, they are something entirely new. Elena had seen this herself. The children who grew up on the new Kythera world seemed to combine the best traits of both species. They were logical and creative, empathic and practical, scientific and artistic. Communications Officer Yuki Tanaka approached the group, carrying a message tablet. Admiral, priority message from Earth Command. The Galactic Council wants to meet with you. Elena read the message. The Council of Major Galactic Powers was requesting a formal meeting to discuss the human approach to interspecies relations. It was the first time humans had been invited to participate in high-level galactic politics. What do you think they want? Elena asked. Chen grinned. Probably trying to figure out how we made cooperation look more powerful than competition. The truth was that the Kythera evacuation had changed the balance of galactic power. Species across the galaxy were reconsidering their relationships with each other. The Altarians had formed an alliance with humans based on shared humanitarian values. The Zephyrians were implementing new policies to help struggling civilizations. Even the powerful hegemony, which had dismissed the Kythera as worthless, was quietly funding refugee assistance programs to improve their reputation. Admiral, Yuki continued, there's something else. We've received distress calls from 3 different systems, species facing natural disasters, wars, or other crises. They're specifically asking for human assistance. Elena felt a familiar mixture of excitement and responsibility. The Interspecies Humanitarian Alliance now had dozens of ships and thousands of volunteers from multiple species. They were equipped to handle emergencies across the galaxy. What kinds of situations? Elena asked. A plague on Rigel 7 that the local medical technology can't cure. A civil war on Kepler 438 where civilians are trapped. And a solar storm threatening the colonies in the Vega system. Elena looked around the garden where human and Kythera children were playing together. 6 months ago, she had been a simple research ship captain. Now she was responsible for humanitarian operations across the galaxy. Yuki, send responses to all 3 situations. Tell them we're on our way. All 3, Admiral? All 3. We've learned that the impossible becomes possible when enough people decide to help. As Elena prepared to leave New Kythera Prime, Bridge Between Swimming Stars gave her a parting message. Admiral Elena, what you humans started here has grown beyond the rescue of our people. You have planted seeds of compassion across the galaxy. The universe is becoming a more caring place because you refuse to accept that some beings are not worth saving. Elena boarded her new flagship, the IHS Compassion, with a crew that included humans, Kythera, Altarians, and volunteers from 6 other species. As they prepared to depart for their first official humanitarian mission, she thought about how much had changed. The galaxy's major powers still focused on trade, territory, and political advantage. But now there was an alternative. Species could choose cooperation over competition, compassion over calculation. Admiral, came a voice from the bridge. It was her new first officer, a former Kythera scientist named Harmony rising from deep thought, who had learned human military procedures with incredible speed. The crew reports ready for departure. Where shall we go first? Elena looked at the star chart showing 3 different crises. People in danger calling for help. just like the Kythera had called for help months ago. Set course for Rigel 7, she decided. People are dying from a plague. They need medicine and hope. As the IHS Compassion accelerated toward its first mission, Elena realized that the Kythera evacuation had been just the beginning. Humanity had shown the galaxy a different way to respond to crisis and suffering. Now they would prove that compassion was not weakness, but the greatest strength any civilization could possess. The dying star that had once threatened the Kythera continued to expand, eventually destroying their homeworld completely. But their people lived on, thriving on new worlds, creating new art, and teaching the galaxy that some things were worth any sacrifice to preserve. In the cargo bays of the Compassion, Elena could hear human and Kythera crew members singing together, their voices creating harmonies that no single species could achieve alone. It was the sound of a future where the galaxy measured success not by what could be taken, but by what could be given. The universe was becoming a better place, one rescue mission at a time.